I just thought it would be better by now.
A critical highway route shut down 1 year ago.
15-minute trip can be 45 minutes.
Demolition of the Washington Bridge is in progress as businesses and residents reel from the impacts.
It's going to take longer time, but we've got to make sure that we're getting it right.
Now the safety of the eastbound side is in question. We're digging for answers about who's responsible as a lawsuit tries to determine the same.
Is there anything you wish you would have done differently?
Have you made changes within the Department of Transportation in the year since?
This is the commuter crisis 1 year later.
Rhode Island is a different state than it was 1 year ago today. The abrupt closure of the westbound Washington Bridge prevented catastrophe. Its ripple effects are just getting started. Good evening, I'm Gabrielle Caracciolo. 90,000 vehicles of Interstate 195 traffic used to drive over the westbound Washington Bridge every day. Now it's being demolished, and the resulting traffic troubles continue to have a widespread impact.
We're not getting the relief that we need.
LaShawna Taylor Sweeney is one of many frustrated people living in East Providence.
I just thought it would be better by now.
When the bridge closed a year ago, she couldn't pull out of her own driveway.
We can get out now, but it's like you can get out and go wait in the traffic.
Living just blocks away, it continues to impact all aspects of her life.
I'm rerouting everything I do. No one wants to come and visit me, first of all. No one wants to come into East Providence. Yes, still, because they know about the traffic coming in.
We're in the shadow of the bridge right here, right?
On the Providence side, Narragansett Brewing couldn't get any closer to the problem.
It was like almost immediate impact. It's just been such a sore subject for residents, businesses, commuters. Like it's almost everybody in Southeastern New England is impacted by this.
Their sales have gone back up with time.
We've slowly gotten better out of that. We were down pretty significantly at the beginning of the year.
Others haven't been so lucky. Several businesses shut their doors. More than 400 people blamed the bridge when filing for unemployment.
I'm angry that it got to this point. Why did it have to get this bad?
For Deborah Spano, it prompted an early retirement.
I just looked around at all the cars and I said, I can't do this. I can't do this every day.
Retired life is less stressful, but she still has to navigate the traffic.
I've moved my doctors to this side of the bridge. I don't go over to see family on the other side as often because you never know what you're going to get.
A year later, the closure is still disrupting commutes, businesses, and more. And it'll continue for the foreseeable future.
I wonder if people really understand how it affects the lives of people that live in the East Bay. You know, their time isn't their own anymore.
Since the westbound bridge shut down, the number one question you've asked us is the eastbound bridge, this one we're all driving over, safe? If you ask the governor or transportation director, the answer is a simple yes. But our investigations have found it's not that straightforward.
Within days of the shutdown, all lanes of 195 traffic were diverted onto the separate, newer eastbound structure.
Well, I think it's really hard to know whether the bridge is safe.
In April, 2 lanes of travel in each direction turned into 3 narrower lanes.
We avoid it only because there's just a lot of uncertainties about the bridge.
It's scary too with those small lanes.
I don't want to have to be stressed about it. I mean, it's stressful enough just trying to manage the traffic over there.
Publicly, Transportation Director Peter Alviti dismissed concerns.
It's adequate for the use that we'll be using it for the next several years.
But behind closed doors, documents first obtained by NBC 10 tell a different story. Less than a week after that statement, a RIDOT engineer wrote, the eastbound Washington Bridge has become considerably more sensitive since the closing of the westbound bridge. That's from a critical expense request form. The state is paying tech company Kistler nearly $2.8 million for new monitoring systems. They're meant to keep track of the eastbound bridge's structural health in real time. RIDOT maintains it's a proactive measure, not indicative of any problems. It was Kistler, not the state, that announced the project kept so under wraps even Governor Dan McKee wasn't initially familiar with it.
You got me a little lost here because I'm not exactly sure when it did come about.
Installation work began in August, followed by weeks of calibration.
Oh, I do think that's a great thing for them to be doing.
If they're coming up with some kind of, weighing system, that seems like a smart idea.
Over the last 8 months, we've requested more than 24 interviews with RIDOT Director Peter Alviti. Those all continue to be ignored or declined without any explanation as to why. We wanted to ask about issues like the eastbound bridge safety, so we caught up with him after a public meeting. There was an inspection back in 2017, less than a decade after it opened, where it was only rated in fair condition rather than good condition. Is that normal for less than a decade-old bridge to not be in good condition?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's typical across the state?
It's typical across the United States.
And as all this work on the eastbound bridge is being done, no additional issues have been found?
No.
It's perfectly safe?
Yes.
It's going to cost more and take longer to demolish than originally planned. The cost now nearly $100 million, more than double the initial estimate. It won't be totally gone until the end of next year. That's partially because of a late decision to take the substructure out of the water. Despite a higher price tag, in June, Aetna Bridge Company beat out the only other bidder, saying they could get the demo done faster. Aetna is also one of the defendants in the state's lawsuit, a fact the DOT maintains is in a conflict.
The legal and process and the claims process is being handled separately the way it should, and that's appropriate.
But if there's a bad actor, don't you need to know that so you don't reuse them or contract them again for other projects?
Throughout the United States, there are claims and counterclaims made between state governments and their transportation contractors. It goes on all the time.
That decision to tear down and rebuild the bridge wasn't made until March. About 6 weeks later, the state asked companies to bid on the project, but that effort came up empty.
We know it's taking a long time, it's going to take a longer time, but we've got to make sure that we're getting it right.
Vendors questioned the scope, risks, and timeline RIDOT laid out. With no takers, the state went back to the drawing board, first asking for feedback.
Did any companies give any indication of how long it will take in order for a new bridge to open?
No.
RIDOT's now trying a two-step bidding process. 4 teams submitted their qualifications for consideration. 2 finalists will work on more detailed bids. RIDOT won't choose a builder until June of 2025.
Why not do the two-step process to begin with? We maybe could have chosen a company much sooner than June of next year.
Well, we may have, and that's in the past, but I can't disagree that it could have been smoother.
Why is it that RIDOT keeps needing these do-overs?
We got to do a lot better.
Look, I agree with the governor. We have fallen short on a couple of issues here.
So how is all of this going to get paid for? There's a combination of state and federal funds already allocated for the project. I sat down with Senator Jack Reed to talk about the $220 million in federal funding he helped secure. Is it difficult advocating for that funding when we don't know who's rebuilding the bridge or how much it's ultimately going to cost?
The state made the request to us of $220 million. We made the case this was urgent. It had to be done. And frankly, very fast speaking in Washington terms, we were able to get the $220 million. Because they understood the impact this has.
If they come back and say, hey, we need $100 million more, will you be prepared to go back and ask for more federal funding?
We're always prepared to assist the state when it comes to funding.
As the White House changes administration and Congress as well, will that impact your ability to go out and get more funds if needed?
We have in the past been able to get funds even under the first Trump administration because, one, we have legislative process and I sit on the Appropriations Committee, so we'll do our best, and I think we can get additional funds if necessary.
When you go to Washington and go to bat for this funding, are you satisfied with the way the state is handling the situation back home?
Well, I think no one's really satisfied because the impact is so severe. Everyone, I think, wants this done quickly, but it has to be done correctly, and that takes time.
The state, the people of the state, deserve a remedy for that conduct.
The state is suing 13 companies, alleging they failed to identify and address critical issues with the bridge. Attorney General Peter Nerona is working with outside counsel on the case.
The biggest takeaway, particularly for non-lawyers, is that this litigation is going to take time, years, not months.
Do you anticipate this actually going all the way to trial, or would you prefer for it to be settled in advance?
Whether or not a case will settle along the way, I can't tell you. There are some high-stakes cases, public corruption cases, for example, that are almost always trials. This is a very high-stakes case for both sides, and so I anticipate it being a trial.
Back in March, the governor had said there'll be a day of reckoning when it comes to this Washington Bridge failure. Do you see the lawsuit as a means to that day of reckoning, or is it just about the financial damages here?
I can't get inside the governor's head and really understand what he meant by that. All I know is this, that we feel that there's culpability, at least some culpability, on the part of the companies that we sued. And that the state, the people of the state, deserve a remedy for that conduct. We hired experts to tell us what we should do and to tell us what we thought the life of that bridge could and should be. We allege in our complaint that the companies that were charged with that responsibility did not discharge it in a way that they should have, and in the end, hurt the people of the state of Rhode Island.
While the companies aren't publicly saying much about the lawsuit, court documents reveal how they're pushing back against those claims. Legally absurd, manufactured allegations, a political blame game, all phrases coming from their filings. They want the lawsuit to be dismissed, saying the state is ultimately responsible for the bridge and they're not to blame. Jacobs Engineering Group says they did their job, giving the bridge a poor inspection rating, adding the state was well aware of the bridge's poor condition for years. A Barletta Aetna legal filing argues the decision on whether to proceed with the rehabilitation in lieu of demolition has always rested with the state. It goes on to say the state's blame game is political and without a supportable legal basis.
Is it possible there's some shared responsibility here?
Oh, sure. I mean, that's always the case in a negligence case, which is really what this case comes down to, regardless of the precise legal theory. At the end of the day, the jury will decide that question. But what we allege, and what I believe, is that these companies had a responsibility to guide the state with respect to the reinvestment in it and its expected and its life expectancy, and they failed to do that in the way they should have and in the way they contracted.
Aetna Bridge Company is a company doing that demolition work. They're also bidding to potentially rebuild the bridge, but they're one of the companies that you're suing. Is that a conflict of interest?
No, I don't see it that way.
Do you have an idea, an estimate of how much money could be recovered from
I don't. I really don't. We're a long way from damages. I think when I step out of office in January of 2027, I strongly believe that this case will still be going at that point.
What went wrong and who's responsible? The state ordered a forensic analysis, but now because of the lawsuit, it's not being released. And no one will say if anyone working for the state is even partially to blame. I went through years of inspection reports in the state's own bridge inspection manual looking for answers.
Never assumed anything like that was going to happen.
You assume that the inspections are being done. That's what you assume, and that they're legit.
In hundreds of pages of inspection reports obtained by NBC 10 from 2014 to 2023, it's clear the Washington Bridge has had its share of issues. Despite problems including rusting, cracking, and leaking, the westbound bridge was one of many across the state rated in poor condition but still deemed safe. That is, until state leaders say a young engineer, not an inspection, brought these broken rods to their attention.
How did that happen without people noticing?
72 hours later, cars drove over the bridge for the last time.
It's horrible.
And it's very stressful. And
the inspection reports each detail how certain areas of the bridge can't be easily examined. Access issues include the bridge's design, construction equipment, and pigeon debris blocking the way.
You know, how many inspections were done on that bridge that was overlooked? That's not good. Doesn't say good for the government either.
We asked Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg about it when he visited in March.
Does that concern you? Do you think the state needs to reevaluate how inspections are being done?
Yes. Thanks very much for coming out. Appreciate it.
Why did it take a decade and a broken bridge for the state to realize there were issues with these inspections? The state's bridge inspection manual indicates both the consultant and the state bear some responsibility. The manual states RIDOT at a minimum is supposed to review all inspection reports with a poor rating. It's unclear if that happened. We tried asking DOT Director Peter Alviti about it, but he wouldn't directly answer my questions. The lawsuit points to concerns with the different bridge inspections over the years. Not on the lawsuit specifically.
Anything about the lawsuits.
But just on the bridge inspection process where concerns have been raised.
Any matters that have anything to do with the lawsuit, you'll need to address to the attorneys.
But you won't say if you're changing the bridge inspection manual as a result of concerns with the inspections?
I'm not saying anything that pertains to the litigation.
Whether or not these inspection reports could have or should have flagged more issues remains unclear. Have you made changes within the Department of Transportation in the year since, updating any internal policies or procedures?
So during the last 8 years, we have made immense changes to the way that we do business at DOT, and we continue to do that on an annual basis. And this year, we did too. Yes.
What are some of those changes?
I won't get into specifics with you, but we've looked at the way that we continue to conduct our inspections, how we act upon them, some of our maintenance kinds of provisions.
I hope they do follow through in going after somebody that made the mistakes and ignored what was happening to the bridge. Because those are people's lives. That's my son, my daughter, my grandson, whoever. Somebody is going over that bridge, and God forbid it collapse.
1 year later, this commuter crisis is far from over. In about 6 months, the state hopes to finally choose a company to rebuild the bridge. It could be years before the lawsuit is settled or goes to trial. And no one knows when we'll all be driving over a new, safe bridge. In the meantime, here at NBC 10, we'll keep telling your stories, investigating the issues, and holding the powerful accountable. I'm Gabrielle Caracciolo. Thank you for turning to 10.